My wife brought her new fiancé to my awards ceremony, told everyone I was just the starter husband. Minutes later, she turned pale when the host announced, "And now, let's welcome the youngest billionaire in tech, whose ex just made a huge mistake." My name's Arlo Whitman. I'm 38 now, but this story begins about 5 years ago when I was 33 and still naive enough to believe love was unconditional. I grew up in Fremont, California, a blue-collar pocket of the Bay Area. My dad worked 12-hour shifts at the Tesla plant, and my mom cleaned houses to make ends meet. We didn't have much, but I had an old Dell laptop from a yard sale that I used to teach myself to code. That laptop changed my life. I wasn't the type of kid people noticed. Skinny, awkward, and more comfortable around machines than humans. I built apps in high school no one used, wrote scripts that solved problems no one had. Still, I kept going. By my mid-20s, I had founded and failed 3 startups. Each time, I dusted myself off, reconnected with my buddy Dax, and tried again. The 4th time, something clicked. We called it Nanospan, a startup working on nanotech optimization for microchips, mostly for AI applications. It was niche, dense, and had the kind of commercial potential only a few investors understood at first. That's when Sabrina came into the picture. We met at a startup showcase in Palo Alto. She was in corporate PR, 10 years older, magnetic. She carried herself like someone who'd already seen the world and had no patience for fluff. She had sharp eyes, expensive heels, and that way of speaking where everything sounded like it belonged on a TED Talk stage. She said I was interesting, said I had the kind of brain that people invest in. At the time, I thought that was a compliment. We dated fast. Within months, we were married. Looking back, I can see how she curated me like a project. The way she changed my wardrobe from tech bro to clean minimalist. The way she corrected my speaking style. The way she always seemed slightly embarrassed by my friends. At first, I didn't mind. I thought it meant she cared. Our home was a reflection of her tastes. Clean white furniture, designer decor, cold lighting. It felt like a hotel more than a home, but she called it aspirational. I'd work late into the night with my team, then come home to a woman who never quite looked me in the eye. She never came to the office, never really asked about my work. When I did mention it, her eyes glazed over. "That's your world, Arlo. I'm in PR. I tell stories." She made it sound like my world was static, cold. Then came the breakthrough. Nanospan caught the attention of a multinational looking to acquire fast-growth tech companies with IP leverage. After months of negotiation, the deal closed. $2.8 billion. I retained equity, became CTO of the parent division, and my name hit Forbes 40 under 40. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just the tech guy. I was the guy people wanted to meet. But instead of celebrating, Sabrina became distant. I tried to bridge the gap, bought us a house on the cliffs of Carmel, took her to Italy, therapy, retreats. But it wasn't enough. She said I was changing. That money had made me self-centered. I didn't realize at the time that what she really meant was that I was finally outgrowing her influence. One night, I flew home early from a 3-day AI summit. I walked into our kitchen and found her leaning against the counter with Reynard, a man I'd never seen before. Trim, bronzed, and reeking of that executive success, energy, designer watch, smarmy grin, the works. They weren't doing anything inappropriate, just sharing wine. But the way she looked at him said more than any act could. "Arlo," she said, startled. "This is Reynard. He's in luxury experiences. We were just talking business." She didn't even introduce me as her husband. That was the night I knew something had shifted past the point of repair. We separated weeks later. The divorce was fast and cold. She fought hard for assets. I let her take more than she deserved just to get out clean. After it was finalized, I heard from mutual acquaintances that she referred to me as her starter husband. Said I was her stepping stone. Said Reynard was her real future. Some even told me she laughed about it at dinner parties. I swallowed the humiliation. I told myself the best revenge was building something better. 6 months later, I was invited to the Tech Forward Summit, one of the biggest industry events in the country. It was to be held at the San Jose Convention Center, attended by thousands of industry leaders, media, investors, and public figures. I was being honored with the Visionary Leader Award, a recognition given to someone whose innovation had made a significant impact. I didn't expect Sabrina to be there. She'd never cared about the tech world, barely understood what I did. But as I entered the main hall in my tailored suit, something she'd never seen me wear before, I saw her. She was draped in red satin, standing at the edge of the VIP section, arm in arm with Reynard. I felt my stomach twist, but I smiled. She saw me. For a second, her eyes narrowed in confusion, like she hadn't expected me to be there at all. Maybe she thought it was a coincidence. Maybe Reynard brought her without knowing. Then the murmurs started around us. "That's Arlo Whitman, the Nanospan guy. The youngest billionaire in Valley history, right? Wait, he's Sabrina's ex." She noticed the whispers. She leaned over to Reynard, whispered something, and laughed. I heard her say the words loud enough for a few others to catch. "Starter husband." It was a phase. That was the moment I stopped caring what she thought of me. Minutes later, the host stepped on stage. The room fell quiet. Tonight, he said, we recognize an innovator whose technology will impact generations. He's brilliant, driven, and he reminds us all that sometimes, the people you underestimate the most become the ones who change everything. Please welcome our honoree and the youngest billionaire in Silicon Valley history, Arlo Whitman. There was a pause. Then the audience erupted in applause. As I walked to the stage, I glanced at Sabrina. Her face had drained of color. Reynard clapped half-heartedly. She didn't clap at all. I gave my speech. I thanked my team, my late father, and the educators who helped me believe I could matter. I never mentioned her name, but the whole room knew. Everyone saw. After the ceremony, I was surrounded by people. Founders, journalists, young developers wanting advice. And in that swirl of validation, I caught a glimpse of her watching from the corner, still with Reynard, but somehow smaller now. Less dazzling. Later that night, I got a message on my phone. From Sabrina. I saw you tonight. You look different. Can we talk sometime? I think I made a mistake. I didn't reply. Not out of spite. Not out of revenge. But because I finally understood something. The best thing I ever did wasn't becoming rich. It was becoming someone who didn't need her approval anymore. In the weeks after the award ceremony, my world felt different. Not because I was suddenly richer or more famous, but because I no longer felt like I was proving anything to anyone. The old version of me, the one who used to check my posture in mirrors before every event, wondering if I'd finally passed Sabrina's invisible standard, that version was gone. Replaced by someone who had been through the fire and come out not just intact, but more grounded than ever. But that didn't mean she was done trying. 3 days after the ceremony, I got a second message. This one was longer. Arlo, I know I didn't handle things well. I got caught up in appearances, and I see that now. I was proud of you the other night. You were always brilliant. I just didn't understand how to support that. Can we meet? Even just for coffee. Still, I said nothing. Not to be cruel. I just didn't feel any desire for closure from her. I showed the message to Dax, my co-founder and closest friend. He didn't say much, just looked at me over his coffee and said, you know, she didn't reach out to apologize when you were sleeping under your desk and pulling all-nighters. Funny how people show up when the lights are on. He had a point. I kept moving forward. We had just launched our new division, Span Ethic, focused on ethical AI development. A nonprofit wing was also in the works, something that offered mentorships, scholarships, and career placement for underprivileged kids interested in tech. It felt good to build something that wasn't just about profit margins. Still, a part of me wrestled with the lingering emotion from that night. Not about Sabrina specifically, but the version of myself I had been with her. The Arlo who bent over backward to become someone worthy of her love, when really, what I needed was to learn how to love myself outside of someone else's expectations. As more messages trickled in from her, each one more emotionally crafted than the last, I started thinking less about what she wanted and more about what I tolerated. I see it now, Arlo. You always had potential. I just didn't know how to be with someone like you. Reynard isn't what I thought. I miss you. She sent that 2 weeks later. I didn't respond to that either. But fate has a way of twisting even the cleanest exits. One afternoon in late spring, I walked into the lobby of the W Hotel in downtown San Francisco for a business meeting with a venture capital group. They were interested in funding Spinethic's education branch. The meeting was at the rooftop bar, where they held informal mixers to feel out new players. As I stepped off the elevator, I heard a voice that made my stomach lurch, not because of fear, but because of recognition. It was Sabrina. She was sitting at the bar alone, her phone in one hand, stirring a drink with the other. She looked tired. Still beautiful, still well-dressed, but her energy was dimmer, as though she were wearing herself like a costume she no longer believed in. We made eye contact. I gave her a polite nod, more instinct than intention, and turned toward my table. But she stood up. Arlo, she said, walking over. Can we talk? Just for a minute. I considered pretending not to hear her, but something in her tone stopped me. So I nodded. All right, 1 minute. She didn't sit, just stood next to me as I waited for my guest. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, she began. Not for the divorce. I think we both knew it was coming. But for the way I treated you. For the way I made you feel like you were never enough. That was wrong. I didn't understand your world. I wanted someone polished, someone who could navigate mine. I didn't realize you were building a world much bigger than mine. I let her speak. It didn't feel rehearsed, not like her earlier messages. This was raw, slower. Her voice trembled a bit. Then she looked at me. You were never the starter. I was just too blind to realize I was standing next to someone extraordinary. For a moment, there was silence between us. Not angry silence, just empty, like a chapter that had nothing left to write. I could have said a dozen things. I could have taken the high road or the low one. I could have pretended to care more or less than I did. Instead, I simply said, I appreciate that. She nodded, eyes a little wet now. That's all I wanted to say. Then she turned, walked back to the bar, and didn't look back. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt clear. That night, I sat on my balcony back home, watching the coastal fog roll in over Carmel. The sky was streaked with red and violet, the kind of view I used to think meant success. But now I understood, it wasn't the view. It was the peace of sitting there alone and not feeling like something was missing. Sabrina had been a chapter, a sharp one, a loud one, but not the whole story. I hadn't just become someone better. I had become someone whole. In the months that followed, Sabrina faded quietly from my day-to-day life. The way old music slowly stops playing in your head when you find new songs that feel more like home. But her shadow, her influence, those still lingered in small ways. Like the way I hesitated before accepting compliments, waiting to feel like an imposter. Or how I second-guessed myself when meeting someone new, worried I might be too me. But time, like everything else, has a way of sanding down the sharp edges. I threw myself into span ethic. Not just the tech, but the people. The kids we mentored weren't just students. They reminded me of me. Awkward, eager, full of ideas, but short on confidence. There was one kid, Jermaine, who reminded me almost too much of myself at 15. He built a neural feedback loop in a week using nothing but a broken Raspberry Pi, 2 soda cans, and a paperclip. When I asked him how he learned it, he shrugged and said, YouTube, and trial and error. I gave him a paid internship the next day. Moments like that healed parts of me I didn't know needed healing. Meanwhile, the media kept doing what media does. I was suddenly on panels, podcasts, even a cover of Wired. Not because I sought attention. Honestly, I hated it. But because people love a good redemption arc. You've become something of a symbol, one journalist told me. The nerd who outgrew his own limitations and everyone else's expectations. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just smiled and changed the subject. But she wasn't entirely wrong. Every time I gave a keynote or talked to investors, I saw faces light up, not just because of the tech, but because of the story. People wanted to believe in the guy who'd been written off, and I didn't blame them. Then one day, out of nowhere, Dax dropped their explosives hell. She's consulting for Bravik, he said. I looked up from my laptop. Who? Bravik. That AI hardware startup trying to rush out neural integrated consumer tech. The ones cutting corners. They brought her on to handle their press and investor relations. I leaned back. Of all the companies, Bravik had recently come under scrutiny for some shady internal practices, employee overwork, gray area data usage, and allegations of proprietary borrowing from smaller, lesser-funded startups. Not illegal, just unethical. The irony hit me immediately. Sabrina, who once criticized my obsession with ethical protocols, was now the face of a company that didn't care where their tech came from or who got trampled along the way. I felt no joy in it. Just confirmation. I'd always believed people reveal themselves more in the choices they make after failure than the ones they make after success. And now I could see her path clearly for what it was. A series of carefully calculated decisions rooted in survival, not vision. Dax looked at me carefully. Just thought you should know. I don't think she's happy, man. I don't think she ever was. I nodded. I don't think she ever knew how to be. What surprised me more, though, was what came next. A few weeks later, I got a call from a private number. I usually don't pick those up, but something told me to answer. Arlo. It was Sabrina's sister, Helena. We hadn't spoken since the divorce. She had always been more down-to-earth than Sabrina, a teacher in Oakland, raised with the same values, but without the need to be seen. Sorry to call out of nowhere, she said. I don't know if this is appropriate, but Sabrina's not doing well. I was quiet. What do you mean? She's unraveling a bit. Career stuff. Personal stuff. She moved out of that condo in Nob Hill. I think Reynard left her with a ton of debt. And Bravik's on shaky ground now. She won't admit it, but I think she needs help. Not money. Just perspective. I didn't know what to say. I'm not asking you to swoop in or fix anything, Helena continued. I just thought, maybe hearing from you could ground her. You're the only person she ever really listened to. I exhaled slowly. She stopped listening a long time ago, Helena. I know, but that doesn't mean she never heard you. That night, I sat with that call like a stone in my pocket, turning it over, feeling its weight. I wasn't bitter anymore. I wasn't angry, but I also wasn't a savior. I'd spent years climbing out of the emotional debris from our relationship. I couldn't go back just because she was now buried under hers. Still, I found myself wondering if healing required compassion even for those who didn't earn it. I didn't reach out, but I did think about it more than I expected to. Later that week, I gave a talk at a university. Afterward, a young woman approached me, mid-20s, nervous. Said she'd followed my work for years. Can I ask you something personal? She said. How did you know when it was time to walk away from someone who used to be your whole world? It stopped me, dead in my tracks. I thought for a long moment, then said, when staying started costing me more of myself than I could afford to lose. She nodded, eyes watery. That makes sense. And it did, more than it ever had. Weeks passed. The call from Helena faded into background noise, like a dream you almost remember but can't quite replay. I never responded. Not because I was angry, but because I was tired of being someone's emotional compass after they ignored every direction I ever offered. But life, being what it is, doesn't always let you avoid the things you've buried. It was a gray Saturday in mid-May, the kind where the sky hangs low and the air smells like sea salt and driftwood. I had driven down the coast to Big Sur to clear my head. I'd left my phone on silent, intentionally off-grid. No notifications, no emails, no pings from board members asking about projections or burn rate. Just air, trees, the hum of distant waves. I pulled into a little roadside cafe I liked, a quiet spot that served overpriced espresso and had a bookshelf nobody ever touched. As I waited for my drink, a familiar voice behind me said my name. Arlo. I turned, and there she was. Sabrina. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, just dimmed, like someone who had been holding her breath for too long. She was wearing a thick sweater despite the mild weather and no makeup, which surprised me more than it should have. Of all the places. I didn't know you came here, she said quietly. I do. I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Been coming for years. She hesitated, then asked, do you have time to talk? I looked at my coffee, then at the empty bench outside the cafe window. It was quiet. Just a few older couples inside and the barista, who clearly didn't care about awkward run-ins. I nodded. All right, but I'm not here to unpack the past. I know, she said. I'm not here to rewrite it. We sat outside. A light breeze blew through the eucalyptus trees lining the lot. For a while, we didn't speak. Then she broke the silence. I'm in therapy, she said, almost defensively. Before you assume anything, I started it on my own. Not because anyone pushed me. I nodded. That's good. She took a breath. Reynard screwed me over. Financially. Emotionally. You probably already figured that out. I assumed. I lost a lot. But the worst part wasn't what he took. It was realizing how much I built my life around appearances. I didn't even know who I was without the show. I didn't interrupt. I let her talk. I used to think you were the one who needed fixing. That if I just smoothed your edges, helped you talk to the right people, got you in the right rooms, then we'd both win. But the truth is, I couldn't love what I didn't understand. And I didn't understand you, Arlo. Not really. She looked down at her hands. I see now that you weren't the one who needed to change. I was just afraid I'd be irrelevant if I didn't control the narrative. That's what PR people do, right? Control stories. I studied her face for signs of performance. There were none. Just exhaustion and honesty. A rare combination. I don't want anything from you, she added. No second chance. No closure. I'm trying to own my part in what happened. And you deserved more than what I gave. I sipped my coffee. It had gone lukewarm, but I didn't care. I used to think if I could just become enough, you'd finally see me, I said. I bent myself into shapes I didn't recognize, thinking love meant constant adaptation. But now I know, love isn't about being less of yourself to make someone else feel more comfortable. She nodded slowly. I know. I get that now. We sat in silence again, the kind that doesn't demand words. After a while, she stood up. I'll go now. I won't bother you again. She paused. But I'm glad I ran into you. Really? I nodded. Take care of yourself, Sabrina. She gave a soft smile, then turned and walked toward her car, a modest silver sedan, a far cry from the luxury coupe she once bragged about. I watched her drive away, but I didn't feel the need to follow with my eyes until she was out of sight. I just sat, watching the wind dance through the trees. There was no triumphant swell in my chest. No cinematic moment of victory. Just calm. Not because something was resolved, but because I no longer needed resolution to feel okay. Life has a funny way of giving you exactly what you need when you stop asking for what you want. After the unexpected encounter at the cafe, Sabrina didn't reach out again, and I didn't expect her to. We both said what needed saying. The truth had been spoken aloud, and once that happens, you either move forward or you stay stuck reliving echoes. I chose forward. Over the next year, Span Ethic exploded in a way none of us predicted. We inked a partnership with the California Department of Education to roll out a STEM-forward AI learning program in public schools, starting in underserved communities from Fresno to Oakland. We even opened an incubator for teen inventors, staffed by former coders, engineers, and volunteers from Silicon Valley who had, like me, come from modest beginnings. My face ended up on the cover of Forbes again, this time not for the billions, but for what they called the redemption build, a billionaire using his second act to uplift first chances. The article went viral. A week later, we were flooded with new offers, new press requests, and a strange but hilarious amount of LinkedIn connection attempts from people who wouldn't have given me the time of day 3 years ago. And in the middle of all that noise came the invitation. It was from Bravik Ventures, the investment division of the same controversial AI firm Sabrina had consulted for. They were in trouble. Their flagship product had hit regulatory snags, something about AI misrepresenting data predictions, an issue their own internal team had warned about. There was a formal investigation pending, and investors were panicking. They wanted me to come in as a guest keynote speaker at their upcoming investor summit, to share my thoughts on ethics in the future of machine learning. Their aim was clear. Association with me would lend them credibility, soften the PR blow, and calm their stakeholders. I almost declined, but then I saw the list of expected attendees. Sabrina's name was there, under media and PR advisory. It all clicked. She wasn't just working with them. She was relying on them. Bravik's success had become her last major career anchor. So I accepted the invitation, not out of spite, but with full awareness of what it meant. The summit was held at the St. Regis in San Francisco. High-end, sleek, full of people nervously clutching branded portfolios and talking too loud at the bar. I arrived late on purpose, just in time for the cocktail hour. When I walked in, all eyes turned. Whispers followed me like shadows. There she was, Sabrina, in black and gold, standing by the entrance to the ballroom, flanked by a few junior execs. She spotted me instantly, and this time, her smile faltered. I kept my expression neutral. She started to walk toward me, but the Bravik director, sweating through his shirt, pulled her aside to whisper something urgently in her ear. She didn't take her eyes off me. An hour later, I was on stage in front of 300 investors, media reps, and AI insiders. I kept it short. I spoke about ethics, about responsibility, about what happens when innovation outpaces integrity. And then I said something that made the room lean forward. People don't lose trust in technology. They lose trust in the people who misuse it, in companies that put profit over purpose, in consultants who spin truth into tolerable fiction. There were murmurs. Sabrina stiffened in her seat. I was asked to speak here to restore confidence. But I won't do that. Because what needs restoring isn't confidence, it's accountability. I ended my speech. No dramatic mic drop, just quiet conviction. And then, as I walked off stage, I passed by Sabrina's row. She looked up at me, eyes sharp, jaw set, but I didn't stop. I didn't need to. The next day, Bravik's board announced an internal restructuring. Several consultants, including PR advisors, were let go effective immediately. They called it a realignment with long-term ethical values. I never heard from Sabrina again. But a few months later, I got an email from Helena. I know you won't say it, but I will. That speech? That was a masterpiece. Thank you for standing for what matters. Some people needed to hear that more than you'll ever know. I smiled at the screen for a moment, then closed the laptop. That night, I hosted a small dinner at my place in Carmel. Nothing fancy, just close friends, some pasta, music, and stories. Jermaine, now 19 and working on his first patent, sat across from me talking about a project he wanted to build to help seniors use AI voice tech more naturally. He looked up mid-sentence and said, "Mr. Whitman, do you ever think about what would have happened if your company had failed back then? Like, if none of this had worked out?" I didn't hesitate. "Every day," I said. "And it reminds me how close we all are to being forgotten, until we choose to write our own story." He nodded slowly. "You did, huh? You rewrote yours." I smiled, sipping my wine. Not rewritten, just finally told it honestly. 2 years later, I found myself back in Fremont, the place I used to think I had to escape to become someone. My mother had insisted on throwing a small backyard party to celebrate my foundation's new partnership with the school district there. She still lived in the same modest house on Camden Street, though the lawn was better kept now, thanks to a service I quietly paid for each month. Kids ran through the yard. My old high school math teacher shook my hand and asked how I'd managed to age backward. I laughed. Maybe it was peace. Maybe just better skin products. As the sun dipped low over the familiar rooftops, I stood under the porch light, the same flickering bulb that used to buzz every night when I came home from my late shift at the gas station as a teenager, and looked out at my past, colliding with my present. There were no cameras, no journalists, just people, real ones. Inside, on the kitchen table, was a scrapbook my mom had pulled out. Newspaper clippings, photos from the first tiny office stacks, and I rented above a laundromat. An old printout of a blog post I wrote in college that got exactly one like, from Sabrina. I didn't dwell on it, but I didn't deny it either. That chapter existed. She existed. We were two people who collided at the wrong time, for the wrong reasons, and still somehow gave each other something real. Maybe it wasn't love, but it was transformation. The ultimate revenge, I realized, wasn't humiliation. It was living so fully and so well that no one else's story could define mine anymore. I'd loved, I'd lost, I'd built, and I had become something no one could take away.